Hello, I'm Eric, and this is Kawasaki's KRX 1000. The KRX uses state-of-the-art suspension while providing comfort and performance. The suspension features spring preload and compression damping adjustments so it can be tuned for any type of terrain. An additional feature included on all KRX models is a spring crossover position adjustment. In this video, we will cover basic setup for front and rear suspension on the KRX, including preload adjustment, crossover adjustment, and damping adjustment. Before beginning, it's helpful to understand the crossover function. The suspension on the KRX is equipped with dual springs on each shock. A shorter, softer rate spring on top offers improved vehicle traction and plusher ride, while the longer, heavier rate main spring helps resist bottoming. As the shock compresses, there comes a point when the smaller spring's job is done and the main spring takes over. This point is called crossover. Ideally, the crossover should happen at a specific percentage of the shock's travel to provide a balance of comfort and traction while also providing bottoming control. Each shock has an adjustment for spring preload and crossover position. Both adjustments need to be made together or the crossover position will not be correct. For example, if the overall spring preload is changed to adjust for driving conditions or vehicle accessories and the crossover position is not adjusted, the crossover point will no longer be correct and could result in a hard or soft feeling of the suspension. Proper suspension setup ensures that the KRX rides and handles like it was designed to. Just like the engine, the KRX suspension has a break-in period. When new, the vehicle suspension might feel firm if driving without a passenger or cargo. Allow some drive time to let the suspension break in before making suspension adjustments. If the vehicle has been in use, check all suspension components for wear or damage and make repairs before making any adjustments. The settings described here are basic suspension settings. Final adjustments to suit operational conditions, cargo, and added accessories should be made using the owner's manual or the service manual. All settings should remain within specifications provided in the manual. Incorrect suspension settings can cause poor suspension operation and handling. Spring preload is the measurement of how much the spring is mechanically compressed when installed on the shock with no load. Most commonly, spring preload adjustments are made for changes in the vehicle weight. Imagine driving along with no cargo versus with a passenger and a full load of cargo. Spring preload is critical as it determines the ride height of the vehicle and should be set prior to making damping adjustments. To check the spring preload, first remove the shock from the vehicle. Then, using a suitable tool like a tape measure, measure from the top of the spring to the bottom. Compare your measurement with the specification outlined in the manual. Based on the user's specific vehicle setup or operating conditions, use the adjustment range provided in the manual as a guide to determine the preload adjustment desired. Less preload if driving alone and without cargo, more preload for driving with a passenger and added accessories or cargo. If adjustment is desired or the measurement is out of specification, loosen the top lock nut at the top of the shock and turn the adjusting nut using the special tool to reach the desired spring length. When finished, tighten the lock nut. The final preload setting should be the same for both left and right shocks. The preload setting for the front and rear may differ, but both the left and right shocks should be the same. Now that the spring preload is set, the crossover adjustment can be made. Measure the distance from the top edge of the spring to the bottom edge of the crossover nut. Compare your measurement with the specification outlined in the manual. If out of specification, loosen the lock nut and use a special tool to adjust until it meets the specification. Once the adjustment has been made, tighten the lock nut. Both left and right shocks should be adjusted the same. Like spring preload, the front and rear crossovers differ, so always consult the vehicle's manual for proper setting. A shock's compression damping adjuster controls the damping force or how quickly the shock compresses when moving over bumps. Before making any compression damping adjustments, make sure that all spring adjustments are within specifications and the same from left to right. Compression damping adjustments are made by turning the knob at the top of the shock. Turning the knob clockwise makes the damping stiffer, while turning it counterclockwise makes the damping softer. Turning the knob, you should feel and hear clicks. Adjustments are indicated by the number of clicks out from the all the way in setting. Never force the knob further than its seated position. Doing so may damage the adjustment mechanism and require the shock to be replaced. When making adjustments, it is always best to start from the standard setting in the service manual and record all settings for future reference. Compression adjustments should be made in small increments, 1 or 2 clicks at a time. The procedures in this video outline basic suspension settings for the Terex KRX 1000. Final adjustments to suit operational conditions and operator preferences should be done in small steps and remain within specifications.